Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We're continuing our read-through of The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, and we're up to the last chapter of part 2, and it's chapter 28 entitled Decision. And this chapter is super important because what is that decision? Dalinar, having considered where he's at mentally, he's still not sure. He thinks he's losing his mind. And sure, he's putting up a strong fight. He's looking to try to continue to move his war camp forward. He's still trying to support Alethkar. He's still trying to lead Adolin and protect Renarin, as well as all of Alethkar, while still trying to help move forward things on the Shattered Plains. All of that is going on in his mind. But the visions still persist, and he is still convinced that they're true, and he doesn't know what to do with it. So what is this decision? The decision has become he is going to abdicate his position as High Prince for Adolin. And the chapter begins, they're going around inspecting the troops, they're hearing about strategy, they're hearing about inventions that are being made, and he is deferring to Adolin every step of the way. He's letting him interrogate, he's letting him ask questions, he's asking his opinion to give to whoever they've been talking to. And Adolin's uncomfortable about this. He wants his father to be the strong leader that he remembers. He wants him to be the Blackthorn that he used to be. Dalinar is in a different place mentally. Well, the chapter progresses when Dalinar needs to get some space. So he had seen some workers who were digging a latrine. And he asked Adolin why Adolin thought that the Radiants of old who left the shard plate and the shard blades for their descendants, he wondered if Adolin had ever thought why they didn't leave anything for civil use. Why was it just weaponry? Why was it just for warfare? And Adolin thinks it's because, well, there's no higher call than to fight for Alethkar. Well, Dalinar, wanting to blow off some steam, requests that his shard plate, shard blade, and a warhammer be prepared for him. He suits up and he goes back to where those men were digging that latrine. He asks them to step aside, and they're shocked that the High Prince himself is there in shard plate, and he begins to wail away at the stone in the ground, and he begins to make this latrine, putting into practice sort of what he was musing. What could these things be used for other than warfare? It's actually helping him clear his mind, and he's making a lot of progress really fast. This probably was weeks of work that he is accomplishing in a few hours. Well, while he's running through everything in his mind, while he's really troubled, someone shows up, and it's Navani. It is Gavilar's widow, his sister-in-law, the mother of Alethkar and Jasnah, who's back in Kharbranth. And he is shocked why she's there, but then it hits him. They were supposed to have an appointment. She was supposed to read for him, and they were supposed to be catching up. And he feels terrible that he has forgotten about her. Well, she is thinking of ways to try to kind of make him pay. Of course, they have such an interesting back and forth. When, in that moment, Dalinar receives word that Jasnah has contacted him, and it's been months since he's talked to Jasnah. He wishes that she'd come back to the Shattered Plains. He covets her advice. He covets her skill. He covets the wisdom that she has. Even though she is young, he still has much respect for her. Well, Navani comes along with them. They go back into the camp. Adolin's there, and how they communicate are by span reeds. And it's so interesting how these things work. They have matching parchments wherever they're at, and these little span reeds are essentially writing quills, but on the top is a fabrial that is connected to an identical fabrial somewhere else. So clearly Dalinar and Jasnah have had these fabrials these span reeds paired to one another. And there's a place where you're going to hold the span reed where it will connect and pass over the signal to the other. And you can write and communicate back and forth. Such a cool idea. Well, they're having a back and forth conversation. He's asking what she's doing. She's asking what he's doing. But she is pushing for some information. In her research in Cabranth, she is asking when he first remembered making contact with the Parshendi. And he shares it's when Gavilar and he were on a hunting trip, and it was a way for Gavilar to, also clear his mind. It's funny that Dalinar was doing similar things. And they ran across the Parshendi, and they were shocked that they were organized and that they had weaponry and that they had skilled labor, unlike the Parshmen that they know of for the Alethi. But she asks sort of what those initial conversations were like. And Dalinar responds that they wanted to see our maps. That's one of the first things that he remembered. And she asks, did they mention the Voidbringers? Of course, this is part of the lore of the Radiants, the lore of the Recreants, the Heralds fighting the Voidbringers, right? And he says, not that I can recall. Why? And she says, I'd rather not share here, but I have something that I want you to look at. And this very detailed drawing comes of what they see as a chasm fiend. Yasna responds that her new ward, we know this as being Shallan, is a very skilled artist. And she wanted her to draw a picture that Yasna found in a very old book, very, very old book, with the description Voidbringer. And it was a chasm fiend. They're very confused why that they would think that a chasm fiend was one of these mystic voidbringers. And she says that's not really the point. She thinks that the artist was just trying to draw a picture of the scariest thing that they could think of. But it's interesting that the one who knew about the voidbringers also knew about the chasm fiend. And that's sort of where the conversation ends. Dalinar asks her to please come back. There's much that she could do to help. She says, I don't dare end my work, but I will return. Span reeds end, people are excused. Navani remains, and she is really pushing Dalinar. She says, we need to talk. What is going on with you? With everything going on. And Dalinar just sort of spills, I'm going to abdicate in favor of Adolin. Navani is not impressed, tells him he's making a horrible mistake. He says, well, it's mine to make. She leaves. And he's kind of comforted that he said it out loud. It feels right. And we sort of end the chapter, end part 2 of the story here, with him sort of thinking in his brain. He would tell Adolin of his decision in the morning, then announce it at a feast coming up soon. From there, he would return to Alethkar and his lands. It was over. This is where Dalinar's come to. He thinks he's losing his mind, and he is doing what he thinks to be the best decision of a leader, which is to remove yourself. It's part of the readings that he had from The Way of Kings. We read a little bit of that in the chapter, but that Noadan, who is the great king of old, was really strong on the fact that a leader is about controlling the situation. And if you can't control yourself, you have no business trying to lead others. And he's taken that to heart. So he is not going to put Alethkar, he's not going to put Elhokar, he's not going to put Adolin, Renarin, his family in jeopardy. He's willing to die for his beliefs and be called crazy, but he will not do that for his country, his people, or his family. So that's where we end. Where is Dalinar's story going to go from here? What are we going to do? One final note before we get going on into part 3 of the story. We get that sort of inscription at the very beginning of chapter 28. And this is a conversation that, if you're reading this for the first time, you don't know who these characters are, but it's a letter being passed back and forth. And this individual who's writing the letter is very desperate. And let me read what this individual says. Do not stand aside and let disaster consume more lives. I've never begged you for something before, old friend. I do so now. There is something greater going on in this story than just the Shattered Plains. And these individuals that are passing this letter back and forth, they're aware of it. And one of them is so desperate that they are begging for assistance. Part 2 of The Way of Kings, Brandon Sanderson's Book 1 of the Stormlight Archives. Thanks so much for watching. If you'll like and subscribe, we'll continue the story in the next chapter. And until then, enjoy the adventure.